Every day, paramedics across the province are responding to calls where someone is experiencing a fentanyl overdose. That number of people overdosing is likely actually much higher because many people are treated by family or friends using Narcan or Naloxone. So what would you do if you came across someone you think is experiencing an overdose or drug poisoning? Today on the show, we're going to give you some information that could save a life. We'll be joined by a pharmacist who's on the front lines of harm reduction in this province, and we'll hear from people with lived experience, both administering and receiving a life-saving dose of Naloxone. Sarah Kazusko works at Queen City Wellness Pharmacy on 11th Avenue in Regina's Heritage neighborhood. She's administered Naloxone and Narcan hundreds of times, and she's willing to share her expertise with us today. And before we start, I want to emphasize that we are listening and we are learning, and this is a judgment-free zone. So if you have questions, if there's one thing that you've always wondered, but you thought, oh, that's a dumb question, or, oh, I don't want to ask that, it's embarrassing, now's your opportunity to ask those questions in a safe environment. Sarah, thank you for coming in today. When we say hundreds of times, how many hundreds of times?
So it's hard we don't keep a counter at the store, but at some points, especially during the pandemic when things were at their worst, really, we were going every single day. Somebody in my staff was going to a Narcan or to Narcan people. We'd be called from houses in the community. People would run and get us to go down alleys or to go into the park across the street. In the last 4 weeks, it's decreased probably because they're happening in other places, but we've probably been going to 2 or 3 a week. And in the last year, it's probably still been 5 or 6 a week that we're going to, that somebody will come and get us and we'll run with them with our Go kit and our AED and our cell phones, and 2 staff member go and we Narcan people.
When you became a pharmacist, go back to pharmacy school. Remember when you were in school to become a pharmacist. Did you ever envision that this would be the path your career would take?
Not at all. I'm a chronic disease management pharmacist. I've got advanced education in cardiology and diabetes and respiratory diseases and geriatrics. And then I went and started working at a pharmacy in the Heritage neighborhood. And I really feel strongly that you help the people in front of you with what they need. Mm-hmm. And so people walking into the store close to where I was working often would come in without any shoes on or without having eaten anything in the day. And you don't get very far with people with their diabetes if they haven't eaten anything in the day. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, how am I going to say to you, how are your blood sugars when you haven't eaten in 3 days, right? Mm-hmm. So we started working about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, shelter, safety, security, before worrying about the other things. So we started making sure that we were helping people with their with clothes and food. And then more and more people in the area live with substance dependency, and those numbers got astronomically worse during the pandemic. And the drugs that came in got more and more dangerous during the pandemic. So we just pivoted and went and got a lot of extra education in harm reduction and just servicing the people that walk in the door with what they need.
So what kind of things do you offer now after all of that pivoting?
So, it's funny because people say, where are you going to go next? And we don't know because we don't know where the community is going to go. But right now we hand out probably 120 meals a day.
Oh, my goodness.
We have coffee served every morning till 11 or 11:30. We've got free Wi-Fi. We've got phones. We, Namron Housing comes in twice a week to do SPDATs and help people get housed. We send people in cabs down to doctor's appointments and harm reduction. We connect them with social services. We are now kind of a hub to reconnect people into the more traditional healthcare settings. We run a well variety program every Wednesday, which is a traditionally based 12-step program. We'll make calls for people to make sure they're getting it to their court appointments, kind of whatever they need. A lot of the people that we service all people. So there's people that look like any single person that is listening to this radio station right now, we service them. But a lot of the people that we service also maybe had a ton of trauma through the years that you're learning to executive function. And so we do a lot of executive functioning for the community, making sure they get to doctor's appointments, making sure that they, follow up with this appointment or that appointment, and just kind of do whatever's needed. Very not traditional.
You sound like a neighborhood mom.
like so many people at the pharmacy call me mom, and then we have a store cook 'em too. So we've got, I always feel like parenting and what I do are very similar in that you need to be predictable and dependable to build trust. And so that's what we do. We try to be there in the same way every single day so people know what they can expect when they walk in our doors.
I have to ask you this before we move into fentanyl and the drug conversation. How do you pay for all of this? Because you think of all of the pharmacies that there are in the city and what a benefit it would be to so many people to offer these things, but the things that you're doing come at a financial cost.
100%. And thanks for asking that, because a lot of people don't realize it's all paid for out of the profits of the pharmacy. So anybody listening, if they get their prescriptions from us and we deliver free anywhere in the city, that funds all of our programming. So it funds, the fact that we have food in the store and that we've got, the store cookums and that we run these well-variety meetings. It funds all that. It funds the wages. We try to have a lot of peers in the store and people with lived experience working. It funds the fact that we go out and do needle pickups throughout the day and all these education things. It's all funded through people getting their prescriptions filled with us.
So you're basically paying for it yourself through the store.
Yeah.
No funding, no grants.
No funding, no grants.
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about fentanyl.
Okay.
It seems like so many deaths that we hear about are attributed to fentanyl. What is it, and why is it causing so much harm for people who don't know? Let's go basic layman's terms.
Okay. So fentanyl is an opioid. Its precursors were things like heroin, oxys, morphine, methadone. All those things are opioids, and they basically go and sit on the mu receptor, the opioid receptor, and they can suppress breathing. Now, fentanyl is so much more potent than any of those precursors were, that a grain of sand size can be enough to overdose somebody as opposed to just, give them the escape that they were looking for. And so I always say in my day, if somebody were to experiment with drugs, they didn't die. Mm-hmm. And now one-time use can kill you. It's being cross-contaminated into a lot of things that are not opioids. So people using crystal meth, cocaine, even marijuana. A lot of the fentanyl is cross-contaminated into it, either on purpose or maybe through using supplies that somebody had used fentanyl through, or just because it was, bagged in the same room where fentanyl was bagged. And that small amount of cross-contamination can kill somebody. Fentanyl traditionally was used as a narcotic in the hospitals to put people to help with pain control during surgeries, and in patch form, like a very slow-acting monitored patch form to help with pain. So it was never intended to be used in pill form or injection without monitoring. On top of that, the fentanyl now is being mixed with other things that are increasing risk of death, things like benzodiazepines. And I always say a benzodiazepine is like opening the door and holding it open for the fentanyl to get in. It just makes the overdoses so much harder to reverse with naloxone if there's a benzodiazepine in it. And then there's a ton of other things that are being put in it now.
I believe the hip kids call those benzos.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What are benzodiazepines?
So benzos, or like on the street, a lot of people are using like Xanny bars. So a lot of those, first of all, are not pharmaceutical grade. They're not anything I've ever seen as a pharmacist. Sometimes people will show me their things or show me pictures of things they found. None of the things that I've seen are things that are actually dispensed in a pharmacy. So unless you take it to a place like in Regina, the Friendship Center has a program or can actually test your supply without destroying your supply. You can get the benzo strips to test them. Benzos used to be used for anxiety. Back when my grandmother was young, they used to have them out saying they were like mother's helpers to help. They were diazepam and lorazepam and Ativan to help take down anxiety. But they, like I said, they kind of hold that door open for the fentanyl to come in, and then it's really hard to reverse the overdoses.
Okay. Our producer, Nicole Huck, spent some time at your pharmacy over the weekend. She met some of your clients. I want to share some of her conversation with Trina Allery and Darren Sangways. Yes.
Me, myself, I've lost around 10 people, my family members, to fentanyl overdose, my cousin lost her son and her granddaughter in the same week, for goodness sakes, you know? It just breaks my heart every time I walk around, you know, the city and see these people, like, everyone discards them. They're not garbage, you know, they're my people, and they have hearts, you know, they're good people that just are, you know, they need help. You know, we all need help.
How easy is it to be able to get your hands on fentanyl?
Easy, yeah, you could get it right now. You look behind you, it's all around you, yeah. Everybody, like, ask anybody, they know how.
And so how much does it cost?
Oh, it's a point costs what?
$20.
$20.
You get it for
And
10.
yeah, you can get $10.
So would somebody inject that?
You could smoke it, inject it.
Yeah, when they inject, like they do the needle, the
It's
worse.
worse. Yeah, you
It's-
could die, like,
So it's $20 per
$10.
or $10 or $20 for one kind of one injection.
We'll give it for 10.
yeah.
And
Scrape
then-
up $10. And sometimes if you're
yeah.
really sick, you ask somebody, I'm sick, and they'll, here, have a hoot, and
Yeah.
they'll give you a puff of their stuff just to get you by, you know? It's like, it's readily available to anybody, practically, you know? You just have to ask.
Have you ever had any experience with an overdose?
Oh, definitely. Myself, I'm pretty sure. Like in 2009, I got addicted to morphine, and I stopped, and I was injecting till 2013. And by the grace of God, I didn't want to die that way, and I went down to like 97, 98 pounds, you know. But I forced myself to break free, you know, and it was the help of one of my best friends that kept me safe and alive. And God bless you, John. Anyways, he helped me get clean, and then because I lost my dad 2009, that's what traumatized me into using, right? And then I had a serious operation in 2017 or 18, and then the doctor put me on morphine again. So, and then after I was done my prescription, he said, okay, next month I'm going to cut you off. So I was like, okay, I don't want to start, you know, injecting again, so I better get to the doctor. And I jumped on Methadone. And then about close to 2 months now, I went to the reserve, my home reserve, Ochapwes, and my daughter got a place out there and a job. So I went out there and I did it cold turkey. I stopped taking Methadone for a little over 2 weeks, and it was so hard. Oh, because I was up to 55 milligrams every day. Like I used to be higher. I think I went up to 85, and then I wanted to come down. But I still felt achy and pains after 50. Like I was on 55 for almost, I could say a year. Like I tried and tried to suffer through it, but it was difficult, you know.
So what does methadone do?
It's like it stops the cravings and the aches and pains and stuff like that. It's like basically a legal opioid. So it helped yeah. And then I didn't want to be attached to that because I have to come here every day. And then now, last week, probably 4 days ago now, I started on Suboxone, and that's where I'm at right now. Is I'm gonna start doing the Suboxone. I have to take it for 10 days, and then after 10 days, I get the injection once every 28 days. So yeah, that's what I'm doing to help my addiction. So
That's what you're doing here at the pharmacy today, is taking one pill.
yeah, and this is where I used to have to come for my Methadone every day, and that's so hard through the winter and everything. It's like I have to come here every day. But yeah, I'm on the red road to recovery, and I'm so thankful for the people here, and they're so wonderful and helpful. And I have to come here for 10 days, and I've been coming to Smudge because it gives me strength, you know. I want direction and guidance in my life, and that's where I'm going to get it from, is from my Creator. So this is where I come connect with the right people in my life, and then, you know, it helps give me strength when I smudge. So yeah, that's what carries us through, because everybody here, you know, they really love these people. Otherwise they wouldn't have this job.
It must feel good, Sarah, to hear people talk about your pharmacy like that.
Oh, so much. And I know both of those people very well, and they're such amazing people, and I'm so privileged to know how amazing they are and to know how they take care of their community and how they take care of each other and how meaningful their lives are to their kids and their grandkids, but also just to the people around them. And they're just awesome.
I had questions. Nicole literally asked all the questions that I had as she was talking to them about how readily available it is, how expensive or inexpensive the street drugs are. But I wanted to check the way they described methadone. Is that accurate to you? How would you describe methadone and how it helps people get off drugs?
So we have a few drugs that are available to help with substance dependency. Methadone is kind of the oldest and the most common. Methadone, it used to kind of be stronger than all the street drugs. Now it's not. Now fentanyl is stronger.
Oh, wow.
But the benefit of methadone is if you're using street drugs for a reason, you're probably, fogging something in your life or using it to cope for something. Methadone, when you don't get to use your street drugs, you go into this horrible withdrawal. And it's like the worst flu you've ever had in your entire life. And when you're in those horrible withdrawal symptoms, you are desperate. And nobody wants to have to be desperate. It means you don't have any autonomy in your life. It means that you might do things you otherwise wouldn't do. You might use unsafe supply. You might share a supply with somebody else, sharing a needle or sharing a pipe with somebody else. You might have to trade sex or steal or something like that in order to get your supply. Methadone, what it'll do is it stops you from going into withdrawal. So if you're using methadone every day, it stops you from going to withdrawal, which gives you a lot more autonomy over your life. You can make better decisions. You can make it to appointments. It gives you a lot more control of your life. Does that always mean that you stop 100%? Not always. But, maybe instead of using drugs 5 or 6 times that day, maybe used it, one time that day. And maybe you didn't die because you didn't use it those other 4 or 5 times that day.
We had a call from someone who wants to know, and I know you can't speak for doctors, but why they are still prescribing drugs like these that cause so much addiction. It's
very complicated. I think that the reason there was a lot of this started because a number of years ago, and this is my understanding of it, in a very reputable journal, somebody put out an opinion article saying that pain should be controlled the same as bleeding and your ABCs, your airway, your breathing, your circulation, and pain, that people should be controlling pain and getting rid of pain to the same level. And so we started really prescribing a ton of opioids during that time. That wasn't really very evidence-based, and I think that there's been a lot of reversal about that. But in that time, there were a lot of addictions that formed. In general, most doctors right now are not prescribing irrational amounts of opioids. Most have gotten the memo and are trying to do alternative things. So I think there's still some people that are getting addicted to opioids because of their prescriptions, but I think a lot of them are coming at it a different way through like trauma and other dependency ways that kind of push it into that dependency. The other thing that I think happens is maybe when people are prescribed opioids after a surgery, there's not enough education being done around them about using it appropriately, using other things, tapering off of them, at what point you should be using opioids versus not, and how much pain relief you should expect to have. Should you expect your pain to go from a 10 to a 0? Probably not reasonable. 10 to go from a 10 to a 6, that's more reasonable, and having those expectations with people.
Well, I know when you get hurt, too, if you take your pain away, there's a good chance you're going to injure yourself as someone who is very accident prone. I want to talk to you about Narcan and Naloxone. Over the last couple of weeks here at CBC, a lot of us actually had the training to do with the Naloxone kits, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, but didn't necessarily have the time to do the training. And the more you hear about the overdose situation in the city and in this province, it's almost something that everybody should have in them because you just don't know when you're going to come upon a situation. What's the difference between Narcan and Naloxone? Let's start there.
Okay. So Narcan is Naloxone. Narcan is just the brand name of Naloxone. And when people say Narcan, often they mean the box of the nasal sprays.
Okay.
Because it says Narcan on there, but they both are Naloxone.
Okay.
So people are often talking about a nasal spray versus an injection.
And what does it do when someone is having an overdose event?
Okay, so fentanyl is going to go, or any opioid is going to go and sit on that opioid receptor. The naloxone is going to go and knock it off that receptor. It's not going to make you get rid of the opioid that's in your blood. So it'll be knocked off the receptor, but it still is circulating in the blood. So as soon as the naloxone is off of that receptor, that fentanyl or opioid can go back on and take over that spot on the receptor again. So somebody can be Narcaned, they can come to, and they can go under again, 90 minutes or so when the naloxone starts to wear out of the system.
So you could have the same overdose over and over again in theory.
Yes, you could. So we always try to get people, if we've Narcan them, one of the things that we can do in the store versus if you're just walking down the street, we try to get people to come in and sit down and have a cup of coffee and just sit with us for a while. Because one of the other risks is you Narcan somebody and you've taken away their high and they go and use again. And then the drug is still in the system.
Oh, God.
And then we've added some more. So as much as it's possible, the education around, when you Narcan somebody saying, hey, you overdosed, don't use anything for another 90 minutes. It almost sounds funny when I say it out loud because, of course, you're going to say that, but is a person going to hear it or respond to that? Probably not. So in our situations, come sit with us. Let's get you a freezy. Let's get you a cup of coffee, and let them sit there. If they won't go with EMS, that's why you always call EMS, because ideally they would go with EMS, and EMS would be able to monitor them and make sure that they're not going to overdose again. A lot of people, though, you Narcan them and they get up and they walk down the street, and there's nothing you can do. And I always say, again, perfect can't be the enemy of good. So you save their life, they might go down again, and nobody's expecting anybody to just follow a stranger around for 2 or 3 hours. You do the best you can.
Do you remember the first time you had to administer it?
It's been so many times now. I think it was actually probably right outside my old pharmacy, our old location, that somebody came and got us, and there was an overdose right on the side of the building, and we weren't as prepared as we are now, so we just grabbed a kit off the counter and called 911 and injected it, and the person was fine.
What do you remember feeling in that moment as someone watching this all play out?
And again, remembering that one versus all the other ones, you're always anxious. Your heart rate is always so high. You don't know what's going to happen. Most of the times you Narcan somebody and they just start breathing, and it's like they went from being dead to being asleep, and it's amazing. I've Narcan people and they have got up and said, I was just sleeping. And then the next day they came and said, you know what, yesterday I think I'd overdosed. I'm like, yeah, you had. And every once in a while they get up swinging, and you're always conscious that could happen. People that get up aggressively after being Narcaned, it's not because they're bad or aggressive people. They get pushed into such a state of fight or flight that they're not seeing straight. They can't see anything. They're just going to run out from a corner and see who's going to be there. So that's why it's important to take some precautions.
When you say precautions, what do you mean?
So an example is if I Narcan somebody, I always try to, if I have the opportunity, I try to move them into a more open location. So Narcanning somebody in a bathroom stall would be a harder thing to do. But I always make sure I've got an exit behind me, and I will Narcan somebody and back away immediately and to have an open door. If they're going to get up in an aggressive way, again, it's not about you and it's not about them, but if they get into that fight or flight response right away, they're not coming after a person. They're just really fight
just
or flight.
A physical reaction.
And that's going to happen almost immediately. So I'll Narcan them and I will back right up. And if nothing happens, I'll go back in there and do the CPR and do another dose and stuff because it happens almost right away if it's going to happen.
I want to hear from another one of your clients that Nicole spoke with, someone who has personal experience receiving a life-saving dose of Narcan. Vanessa Leakey spoke with Nicole this weekend.
And Vanessa, have you ever had someone use Narcan or Naloxone on you?
Yeah, they sure have. I know I OD'd a couple of times. It wasn't fun. And I kind of see myself like a spider and I was crawling back into my soul. That's what scared the shit out of me. And I woke up at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the morning, I locked myself in the bathroom. I didn't know I was going to OD.
So take me back to this time. What did you think you were taking?
It was white, pure white fentanyl. It looked like crack.
So you thought you were taking fentanyl?
I thought I was taking crack cocaine, but it wasn't. But it was fentanyl. It OD'd me just like that. I just dropped out of my bathroom sink and bounced my head off the sink.
Was it Naloxone or Narcan? Who gave it to you?
My boyfriend Claude. He had to push the door open, so it literally curled up into a ball, and he couldn't get into the bathroom. And the way I was laying.
So he had to push his way into the bathroom, and then he found you passed out. You'd hit your head on the sink.
And after that, I was curled up behind the door.
And did he inject it, or did he use the nasal spray?
I think he used both. I don't remember.
And then what was it like when you came to?
And then I felt like I was myself. I felt like I was dead. I felt like I was a nobody. It made my old man cry though. He thought I wasn't playing no game.
Your boyfriend thought you might have lost you.
Mm-hmm.
Did it change things for you after that, after almost dying?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it sure did.
How so?
I just stopped using everything after that.
Like just cold turkey?
Mm-hmm. I jumped on the Methadone program.
Like the next day you went to, or did you have to go to the hospital? Did you have to go to the hospital that night? He just did it all at home?
Mm-hmm. Just did it all at home.
So what were you doing at the pharmacy today?
Picking up my Methadone.
So you're on methadone now?
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you been on methadone?
Since Mom passed away. Yeah. Well, 4 years now, I think.
And so you have to go and get methadone every day?
Yeah.
So does the methadone do it for you then? Is it enough to keep you from wanting to use?
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to that story, and she describes it in a place that you really can envision what she went through, what stands out from Vanessa?
So I know her very well, and I just adore her. She's one that calls me mom. She's a special woman. I've seen her scared about it. I've seen a lot of people scared about it, and I remember when her mom died. I remember when she started on methadone.
A lot of stories that we hear involve people starting using after grief of losing a loved one, even if that loss was due to an overdose. Are those things that people share with you when they come in?
Yeah, we have, because like we're a safe space. We say that first off, so there's no judgment in there because there's just no judgment in there. And people tell us there's so many reasons people use it. It's very rarely going back down to one thing or one event. It's usually lots of things. And I always say trauma is like the heater in your house. It's like if you've experienced a ton of trauma, then it's like your house is freezing cold and you will use whatever you can as a blanket to keep warm. So that might be alcohol, it might be opioids, it might be crystal meth, it might be shopping addictions, it might be like lots of different things that people use to cope. And when we tell people to go like cold turkey, it's like taking away their blanket without ever turning on the heat in the house. So we have to do a lot of things to raise the heat in the house and deal with that. By saying that, I mean, we've got to deal with that trauma, the trauma around the reason that people use, so they don't feel like they need to use anymore, that they don't need that blanket anymore.
I can tell, though, listening to Vanessa and talking about her has made you a little bit emotional.
Yeah.
How do you take care of yourself? Because you're surrounded by different kinds of trauma every day.
Yeah.
And then also watching people die and essentially come back to life almost every day. So how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, and you know, actually the thing that causes me personally the most stress is always worrying about like my staff and how much trauma they're experiencing. So this vicarious trauma is a big part of it. Same thing happens with journalists. You know, you get vicarious trauma. You see things all the time. And we try to do a lot of self-care. So we try to have meetings with other frontline workers like us in the Heritage Community Center, where we have kind of like a sharing circle regularly. I personally, you know, make sure I see a counselor regularly. We talk about boundaries a lot in the pharmacy and the things that we can do and the things that we can't do. And having really good, firm boundaries in place kind of helps us with that a little bit, because it outlines what our role is and what it isn't. And that kind of helps you a little bit to have some walls around the things that are going on. But we laugh a lot in the pharmacy, like a lot. We laugh a lot with the clients. And so we're not just seeing the trauma. The trauma is such a small part of our day-to-day stuff. Most of our day is like laughing our tails off and like laughing with the people in the pharmacy. And we do a ton of celebrating. We have celebration days at least once a month. You know, we've had Boston Pizza come in and sponsor pizza days for us. We've had McDonald's sponsor things, and we pay for a lot of them, and we hand out cake, and we celebrate people's birthdays, and we celebrate them getting their houses, and we celebrate everything. And those things, if you're doing enough of that, it outweighs the other things. And we also are always glad that we're there, because like one of the things when we moved down the street, even though we only moved like 6 or 7 blocks, I was like, what about the people that are overdosing on that street? Who are they going to go to? Like, are they going to have to run all the way down to us? And I'm like, I have to just know that we're getting enough Narcan into the community and that there's people here that we're helping now, and we're going to be able to do a lot more helping because we've got a bigger space now.
Okay, I have one last piece of tape, and then I want to end off talking about Narcan, where to get it, and Naloxone, and the training. But there is another perspective. It's another woman named Vanessa, who is very honest with our producer, Nicole, about some of the challenges she's experiencing. Here's part of their conversation.
Yeah, I'm Vanessa, and 37, and I've been using for like a year. Started using it because I was in the Xanax bars I was taking.
You started using opioids?
Like Xanax? Yeah, I've been using opioids. Like, I started with morphine a long time ago, and I've been on the Methadone for quite a while.
And how did you start on the morphine?
My kids got taken, and it is, I feel like, an emotional number as well as a physical.
I had a friend who was given morphine when she was giving birth, and she explained it as a wave that just came over and made her not care about anything anymore.
I couldn't, like, my firstborn was a stillborn, and I looked at my kid's dad, he was bawling, and I couldn't cry, but I felt like a nice euphoric, like, calmness.
So you're using the morphine, and you got it on the street or from the prescription?
On the street, yeah, like, you know, try cocaine and bring something down.
And how much does it cost?
Okay, well, back then it was about 20 to 30 a pill, and it was my ex who, like, he was in NS, and he had plans to, like, put me on the street, I guess is what he said, pretty much.
He wanted you to do sex work?
Yes, yeah, to make money for them. Because he would always tell me I was sick when I knew I wasn't.
And so it was $20 or $30 each time. What about now? Are you using right now?
Just the Fentanyl now because it was in the Xanax version.
So it's an injection or it's a pill?
It's the fentanyl. It's like a slab form, I guess. Like
How many people have you known who have experienced an overdose or a drug poisoning?
pretty much there's a few that have done it that haven't. I'd say that much.
So most people that you know that use have experienced an overdose or a drug poisoning at some point.
Yes, or they've been, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you just got from the pharmacy. You just got the spray and the injection.
Yeah, because in case one doesn't work, there's the other one.
So how many times have you had to use it on somebody?
My sister, she never did down before that. Is what I mean by down is morphine, stuff like that, or methadone, and so she could, my brothers found her, dead on the floor. I found her dead, and people in the alleys here.
So you just want to have it on you in case you run into anybody.
Yeah, pretty much. If anybody needs it, I would help them.
And you've used it on some people before?
Yeah, of course. I noticed it's about getting that air wave going. Because you can Narcan them as many times you want, but you also have to open up their lungs for them and get that first breath of air to get them going again,
Have you ever done the mouth breathing on people?
Oh, yeah. You'll tell right away.
Yeah, so how did you know?
Blue lips. Pretty much every time.
People's lips start to turn blue.
And they're unconscious. You cannot get them back to consciousness.
How many people's lives do you think you've saved?
Quite a bit. The last time I OD'd, I tried to make people aware of that. And say, I want to die anyway. It's like, no, you don't.
And what did you think you were taking when you OD'd?
I knew what I was doing. The first time I OD'd, I came back. I went to the DMT state, I say, because it was a weird dream, reoccurring. And I knew when I came through that something bad happened, to me. And
I think everybody's really scared of fentanyl. Now, how has fentanyl changed things?
because I did not know I was taking it. Again, I hate it because I don't think I would be on it had I not known,
We're standing outside of the Friendship Center right now, and they do have drug testing abilities inside. Have you ever taken your drugs to get tested to make sure that they're safe?
No, I haven't. And I guess that's the smartest thing to pick up right now.
Do you know people who get their drugs tested?
I know some of them that do it all the time.
Just to make it safe. And when you go to the pharmacy now, are you on methadone or are you just getting?
I'm on the methadone, but again, it's like, why? What's the point when you're?
Because you're in active use as well.
Exactly.
I heard that if you're on methadone and you're in active use, that it makes you extra sick. Is that the case?
I heard that it leaves holes in your brain. The mixture of the doing it. It makes you damn dense, like stupid, since it's simple.
What do you think it would take for you to be able to? Do you want to?
I want to quit.
You want to quit?
After I felt that, yes.
And what do you think? What do you need to get there?
I need just a lot of hope, and because it's very important to me that I leave good memories of my granddaughter.
You got a granddaughter?
Yeah. Thank God they're not living in that mess no more, because they were for a bit, and they've never seen me like that, so.
And do you have a place to live and everything now?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And how does that, like, do you have supports at the place you live, or how does that work?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah, supports. Like, there's definitely, people who want me off of it. Nobody wants anybody on it. I mean, I'm not ever an encourager of my addictions because I don't know what that would do to somebody down the road. So, which means they could become a hooker, they could die, they could whatever. Life change totally. Who knows what's next? It feels like scary times are ahead.
Vanessa talked about a lot of things. Sarah, what stood out to you from that conversation between her and Nicole?
So many things, like what a brave woman she is, hey, to share her story, and what an amazing person to like openly carry Narcan to be able to save other people's lives and carry it around with you. Like not as many people as I would like do that, right? Carry Narcan in case they see somebody passed out on the street, just in case, because they know people that's happened to. So what an amazing human being to do that. The comment that she made about methadone and fentanyl causing holes in your brain, that isn't true. Obviously, using fentanyl and methadone together increases risk of having an overdose substantially, except for when you take into account that hopefully you're using less fentanyl because you're on the methadone, and we don't know what's in the fentanyl. And so maybe instead of, like I think I said earlier, instead of using it 5 times a day, maybe use it once a day. So it's a really hard thing to judge about the safety because we're using less fentanyl. I think that we're increasing safety by making methadone available. It's like giving, a safer supply, a known supply to people.
Can you overdose on methadone?
100%, yeah. Methadone is not something like, if I took methadone, I would probably die because I'm opioid naive. I don't have, I don't have any tolerance to something like that. 100% you can overdose and die on methadone.
Okay, I didn't
but
know
it's safer, right? Everything we're doing is harm reduction, meaning it's not going to be the safest thing, but it's going to be safer than what the person was already doing. And everything has to be looked at a stepwise approach. What is one step safer than what the person was doing before? And then we can get them another step safer, and then another step safer. Because these people, that come into our pharmacy, they're family. They're have such important and valuable lives. We've been able to hire people that were once clients to become staff, and so many of them, I know so many people that have gone through methadone and Suboxone programming and are living full and amazing lives by anybody's standards.
Let's talk about Narcan, Naloxone, and the kits, because as you said, they're not something that is necessarily widely carried by the general population. But everyone either knows someone who's overdosed or they know someone who's died that's maybe a family member of someone else. There's that 6 degrees of separation has gotten much, much closer in this opioid crisis. So how do the kits work? Where do you get them? What do they cost? What's the pitch to get people to carry these?
So the Naloxone kits with the injectable kits are available at a lot of pharmacies. You can look online and at the Take-Home Naloxone program. If you just Google Take-Home Naloxone program Saskatchewan, there'll be a list of pharmacies that have those kits available. And through that program, Naloxone kits are free, and that's for anybody in the province. I think that all or most emergency departments would have it to hand out at their desks for that reason. Anybody that's covered through treaty status can get Naloxone kits covered for them, and they can go to a pharmacy and ask for it to be put through like a prescription. And there isn't a prescription required for that, and that's the only medication that you could use for like a loved one that maybe is using opioids, because you can't really use Naloxone on yourself.
Right. Now, I want to ask you, what is the biggest misconception? Because I know Nicole talked to people outside of your pharmacy, and there is a stereotype and a stigma that comes with the assumption of the kind of people, I use in quotation marks, that typically overdose on drugs. We know through the opioid crisis that typical isn't a thing anymore. But what do you think the biggest misconception about the opioid crisis is?
I think a big problem is that people just don't see value in other people's lives, which is a huge problem. And I think that they think it won't affect me or it's different types of people. And that is a really dangerous conversation to have because, you know, if you don't know that people are using drugs, they're more likely to overdose and die. That's why we have people in all parts of the province dying, you know, and moms didn't know that they were using. So you just can't stereotype. Fentanyl can be easier to get, you know, than alcohol in some places, and it's cheaper than alcohol. You know, $10 or $20, you can't buy a Mickey of, I don't know for sure. I assume you can't buy a Mickey of vodka for that much money. And so, and you don't get the same sort of,
Well, and you're dealing with store hours and access too, right?
Yeah.
Where with street drugs, the access isn't necessarily an issue of a store.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and ID and all the other things. So it's not... I think access is not a hard thing, as they told you before, for the street drugs. And I think that it's happening everywhere. And because of the cross-contamination, you don't know who might overdose on fentanyl. We just need to get rid of the stigma. And, you know, I think there's overdoses that happen in Walmart. There's overdoses that happen to anywhere. So there's no person that should ever say, I don't need to carry naloxone.
And when it comes to helping someone, whether it's in a Walmart or a bus shelter or in a back alley, the difference between feeling unsafe and helping someone and uncomfortable, because I think you said every time you've had to do it, you're anxious.
Yeah.
That is discomfort at its highest level.
Yeah. And exactly, very different than unsafe. Take reasonable precautions. Make sure you've got an exit strategy. Make sure you're not Narcaning somebody that's walking around, right? Like you Narcan somebody that cannot, like, that is not rousing. You know, you give them a sternum rub. You push their shoulders. Make sure that they're unconscious, and then give them Narcan. Back away a bit, and yeah, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but you're not unsafe, and you maybe saved a life. I've pulled over on the side of the road because I saw somebody overdosed on in a bus shelter once, and you know, reversed them. And I've certainly done it around the pharmacy a million times. But yeah, I think it was Melissa Burton from the YWCA said that once, and it always stuck with me. Are you unsafe or are you uncomfortable? Because uncomfortable is okay, and that's kind of a, you know, something to get over that hurdle. And you've got to sometimes do things that are uncomfortable.
I think in having conversations about these things for other people are uncomfortable, and maybe that's a great place for people to start.
100%.
If people want more information, are you willing to be a source of information among the other million things you do for this community?
Of course.
How do they get a hold of you?
Walk into our doors anytime, or give us a call at the pharmacy, or find us on Facebook. We monitor our Messenger app. There's a few of us that monitor it. Queen City Wellness Pharmacy on Facebook. Our phone number is 306-522-2266. Come into our pharmacy at 1725 11th Avenue in Regina. Yeah, come and see us.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And for all of the lives that you've saved in the Queen City. I imagine that, unfortunately, it's going to be something that continues. But it's because of people like you that the information gets out. So thank you for this today.
Thanks for highlighting this.